All right. Hello, I am Alicia for the people who I haven't met either in the program or in this Facebook group or on the webinars. So, I am a nutritionist and I'm one of the people that runs this Facebook group and then also the Love Your Skin program. So, it's me along with, Megan and Mandy, the little team. So, this week we were talking about the flare up bucket and the drops in the bucket and how that it's not just about identifying triggers, but it is about actually draining the bucket. So I thought I would hop on and introduce myself because there are quite a few new people that I haven't seen. So um, just to say hello, introduce myself, and then also share my story too. So I, as well, like most people, like everybody here, has had eczema um, for most of my life. So it's very, very common. Had it as a kid and then comes back with a vengeance. And, the people that are on the journey healing your skin. So I have been flare up free for years, which is great. I mean, I do still get like little dry spots here or just little patches, but they're usually gone in a day. So, I thought I would just share my journey. And I always put a disclaimer on the fact that what I did to heal my body. And I think, the disclaimer is everybody's journey is different. So people always ask me, what my journey was like and what I did, but you do have to understand, like you have to listen to your body, your symptoms. And then that will dictate the healing protocol. So that's just the disclaimer. So what I did isn't going to work for everybody, but it is really good just to hop on and have these open conversations. So there are lots of other interviews in the group, which are really helpful for people because what it does is it normalizes experience. So you can have eczema, and this is how I felt. You can feel like, why is my skin reacting like this? Like, am I damaged? What's wrong with my body? But when you can start having these open conversations and hearing other people's journey, you're like, oh, hang on, that's me too. And that's a big part of the Love Your Skin program is creating, and also what I wanted to do with this group as well is to create a community so people can learn about themselves and also normalize their experience because it's not just you that's going through this and your body's not damaged. So um, what I'll do is I'll start from the beginning because this is important, and this is when we're on calls with people in the program, we always start off as like hasn't been well since picture. So for me, and let me know if any of this resonates with you guys, I had it when I was a kid, and I just remember using so many lotions and creams. There was this I don't even know what medication it was. It was something liquid. It would burn my skin so much. I had all these red patches on my face, and I remember that when I was about 10 years old. And you don't want to have white dots all over your face. At that age, you're starting to start gaining confidence and stuff. So I did have it at an earlier age as well. And then there was a big flare, and then it was somewhat manageable. I just lived with my rashes. Like I had the classic eczema on my arms that would flare up and get itchy. And it didn't really control my life in most of my high school years. But then in my 20s, when I went traveling, it started spreading on my face, behind my knees, and then it progressively got worse. So it's one of those things that I just kind of ignored it or just accepted. It's like, oh yeah, it's this thing that I have, and whatever, just kind of get by and not think of it. And then that takes me to my mid-20s, where that was my big hasn't been well since picture. And so I have posted some of my pictures. I don't have pictures when I was at the worst. I wish I took them then. But that was the point where the small rashes literally went to mid-arm and to mid-forearm, spread same way on my legs, armpits, and then my neck. It started here and then literally just spread upwards and then started all over my eyes, my ears. I think you guys know the gist. And so that was my hadn't been well since picture. And it was really hard because for me, I was really social. And at that point in my life, I was doing lots of partying, drinking. So obviously, there are all those things that weren't quote unquote healthy, but you're in your 20s and you're just having fun. But what I would do is yeah, I just ignored all those signs. My body was obviously yelling out for help. But then it got to the point where it would get so bad that I wouldn't go out to social events, or I'd make excuses that, oh, I was studying, oh, I was working, or start making excuses. Because you get to a point, and let me know in the comments if anybody can kind of sympathize, or if they've been in the same situation where I would wear long sleeves to shirt. Like I had boils. Like I didn't go to the hospital, but there are definitely staph infections now after realizing it. But I had massive boils all over my arms. And then, like, even the long sleeves were just irritated and itch. And then it got to a point where I couldn't hide it anymore under long sleeves. So I ended up just staying at home and making excuses not to go out. So it's interesting because I hear a lot of people say this as well, is that, when you have eczema, you're just really good at hiding. So hiding under your long sleeves, and also hiding at home when your rashes get really bad and just making excuses not to go out. And we're social humans, so that affects the brain and your emotional state and your mental state so much when you stop that connection. But it's common, right? Because you feel pain, you don't want to, feel embarrassed about your rashes, have people look, and then obviously that can create anxiety. So that was a big one for me. And even now, a lot of my friends would say, "Oh, I didn't even realize how bad it was." When I started posting on social media and sharing my story, and it's just, this is one of the things with the brain skin connection. So the psychotherapist in the program, the way that they look at it is eczema is a condition of lack of boundaries with yourself and with others, and it is common. Literally every single person in the program has the pattern of just being a really, really beautiful human and giving, caring, doing for everybody else, but not prioritizing their own health. So yeah, drop a one in the comments if you can relate to that, because it's something across the board that I've noticed. But I did have that aha moment because I was studying, so I was doing my degree in nutritional and dietetic medicine, and I remember going into class. And so I'm obviously in class with everybody who's focused on nutrition, right? And I'm going in there covered in rashes. In the narrative in my head was I felt like I was diseased to some extent, right? And I know I should know the basics and how to heal myself, but I was still covered in rashes. But then I had that aha moment. So if I'm doing a degree in this and I want to help other people, hang on, I need to help myself first. And I need to prioritize myself first. And that was a big turning point and realization for me, is that I can't just keep giving, doing all these different things. I do need to prioritize myself. So, and my goals, so I can help other people. But yeah, it was a really hard journey. And looking back, there were so many telltale signs that I should have been aware of. So that's another reason as well, is want to try and spread the word. Because if you can catch these flare-ups, right, you had it as a kid, it comes back, and it might be manageable at one point, you want to address it before all the symptoms start snowballing. So I'll give you guys a little background on how that looked for me, and let me know if any of these resonate with you guys, because if they do, all of these symptoms in your body, it's your body yelling out for help. It's the engine light. So you want to address those, and we do have lots of resources to help people at that point. So comment below, and then we can reach out and give you some of the resources. Or if you just want to share, that's cool too. So for me, obviously skin and immune related. And in my 20s, like I said, I didn't have the healthiest diet. I mean, I ate healthy probably kind of like Monday to Friday, and then the weekends binge drink and, eat all the food. But for me, it started out, so with gut issues. So I had a big disconnect. I wasn't in tune with my body, so I don't really know my early 20s what was going on. I was just more so out of my head dealing with life. But the point that I remember was all the gut issues. I would feel, at one point, I literally thought I was I got pregnant and I didn't know. And I was just like, am I like, what's happening? I was in so much pain. I would just get so bloated. Was so reactive to dairy, gluten, soy, nuts. That was kind of a tipping point, which I had put back to getting an infection when I was overseas. And then that's when there was a big snowball effect. Also, that is a time when I was really pushing myself. I was working in the corporate world for full time, started pre-med meal business and studying. So I had like one full time and two part time gigs. So pushing myself, not dealing with the emotional stuff, that would definitely be the biggest tipping point. And every single person, when you can tune into it, there's an emotional or major life event where there hasn't been well since as well. So it can be internal stress, but it can also be a physical stress like some sort of overgrowth or infection in the gut. So from there, it snowballed into crazy food sensitivities, which stemmed from the gut. And then all of a sudden, I was so reactive to my house, dust to mold. I think if you guys know what it's like, getting new mattresses, vacuuming all the time, getting like steam cleaning to come in the carpets, putting your pillows outside in the sun, trying to get rid of all the mold. That was just like took over my whole life. Food sensitivities, every single food. I eventually got the IgG food panel and then ended up just avoiding all those foods, which did more harm than good in the long run. Then I started noticing that I had a snowball effect in terms of all my symptoms. So then I had just the worst painful periods. So my like breast tenderness, my boobs would go up like 2 sizes. Everybody would say, "Oh, you got a boob job." I'm like, "No, it's just my hormones." And then just extreme like crippling, had to like roll up in a ball, cramps, pelvic and back pain, and really, really heavy flows, which affected, my iron levels and obviously energy and everything. So that happened. And then it's just that snowball effect of symptoms and more things popping up. And then I was just so reactive to whenever the weather would change. I literally would like tell my friends at the house, be like, it's gonna rain. I could tell when like it would become more humid and I would just start getting itchy. So we just kind of had some like funny ongoing jokes like that. But my triggers at that point were food, the weather, stress, the house, just in terms of mold and dust. So I literally felt like I was reactive to the world, which was hard, right? And then also just trying to like juggle social life, work, and studying. So let me know in the comments if any of those resonate with you or if you've noticed a snowball of symptoms. And like the reality was for me is that I didn't address it and they just kept getting worse. And it was frustrating because I was like, oh, I'm restricting my diet. Like I got rid of all of the foods that were on my IgG food sensitivity. And it did help a little bit. But then I was like, well, this isn't sustainable. And then what would happen is I'd go out and drink. So I kept doing this yo-yo of, okay, let me cut out eggs, let me cut out nuts, and then didn't notice a difference. But the problem was that I wasn't doing the healing at once. And so, having that like start then stop put me, like I'd feel like I went 2 steps forward, but then I'd go 5 steps backwards. So I was lucky because I also had access to the best nutritionists and herbalists and naturopaths in the country when I was studying. So that was also a level of frustration because everybody was giving me different advice and some of it would work a little bit, but the problem was that it wasn't addressed as a whole, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So what ended up happening is I ended up doing traditional Chinese medicine, doing the acupuncture, taking the herbs internally, topically. I did the blood work. I did all of the sensitivity tests. I did the liver detoxes, which actually overstimulated my liver, caused more inflammation. I did the gut healing. Like, you name it, I did it. Like, I had cupboards full of creams, literally tried every single cream. Went down the natural route, which a lot of the natural products actually made my skin worse too. So I did the bleach baths because I finally found a doctor that spent an hour with me, but still obviously very conventional based. So I just smelled like bleach everywhere I went. It was a lot. Um, so yeah, I ended up spending thousands and on my whole journey, like including doing my degree, all of the testing, all of like the coaching that I've done, and I've spent like 90,000. It's crazy. Um, but the thing is that like it doesn't have to be that way. Like I didn't have a program, I didn't have the structure, I didn't have something that addressed the brain skin connection, the gut skin connection, and the holistic part of it. So I was just really winging it on my own. But the silver lining is that I did learn a lot about my body and just about the human body in itself. So yeah, that was my journey. Let me know in the comments. I'm trying to see if I can see the comments here. So let me know in the comments what you guys have tried, if you've tried any of those, or if you've tried any other modalities. Oh, I did the energetic ones as well, where they did the food sensitivities. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, I did Reiki as well. You touch that little rod and they tell your food sensitivities. Anyways, you name it, I tried it. So that was a little bit about my journey. And, the hard part about all of that was that I was that person that had said, I'm chill and nothing bothers me and I just get on with life. So I didn't realize until, later on, like how much that did affect me. And I made a story that, I'm just really busy, I have work, I've studied, but it was just because it was a self-confidence thing and I didn't want to go out in public. So I ended up suffering for like a decade, right? Most of my 20s. And that's hard, right? And it's hard when you go through those loops and keep repeating the same patterns. It feels like insanity. And it's hard when you're doing all the things but not getting the outcome. So I totally understand what that's like. And I understand how hard it is when you are putting so much energy into it. So, yeah. Okay, let me have a little chat about the drops in the bucket. So I went down the path of, I'm reactive to all of these things. So what I did with what just made sense at the time is I just avoided everything. So moved house, so got rid of the dust and the mold. Yeah, that was helpful, but it still didn't, if you rate your skin on a scale of 1 to 10, I was still an 8. It wasn't as severe, but I was still getting flare-ups because I hadn't addressed the other factors. So what's really helpful, and I suggest everybody, if you get a pen and paper, draw a bucket. And then you can write down what fills up that bucket. So if you think of your whole body as a bucket of inflammation, what's contributing to all of that inflammation? For me, part of it when I was living in a house with mold and dust, it was that. And then it was also, I had these gut infections. I was restricting food, creating nutrient deficiencies. You need these nutrients to run all of these different organs in your body and provide energy and antioxidants. I took all of them out. I was eating, like a lot of people that you hear on the interviews, I was eating chicken, cabbage, chickpeas. I was lucky I was able to eat eggs, but I literally only ate a few things. So obviously that has a big impact. And then the stress and anxiety over, which for me at that point, I wasn't conscious to those narratives that was happening in the back of my head. So the stress and anxiety is literally out of everybody in the program. Anybody who is in the program, actually let me know, and you can share some of your triggers because it's helpful for other people. But the stress and anxiety portion is by far the biggest contributor when you start tuning into that. And then for me, change of weather. So my skin could be flared up to 11 out of 10. And then I'd go on holidays and I'd go somewhere dry and it would clear. And then for me, I was just like, what is going on? It's the weather. It has to be that. But it wasn't. Like, it's so easy to get caught up in these, like, those small details. But then I'd come back and live normal life again. And I was just like, so I need to move. But there wasn't the issue. It's just because that was taking up a portion of the bucket, which was overflowing. I wasn't actually getting to the root cause. So Weather is a big one. Food. I think I went through most of them. So also sun too. Sometimes if I'd be out in the sun, sometimes the sun would be good for me. Other times it would create crazy rashes and hives as well. Um, so all of those things would trigger me. Oh, also my own sweat. I'd go to the beach. I'd go to the gym. Every time I go to the gym, everybody would know I'd run to the back of the gym and get ice packs because my skin, it would look like I'd have welts. And it was almost like it was like, not warts, but it looked like lizard or turtle skin. So yeah, it was like, it felt like I was allergic to my own sweat as well. So that's everything that filled up my bucket. And actually, if you guys are open to sharing, draw that bucket and actually post it in the group because that might help other people identify different things. So I figured all that out and I avoided all of it, which is not the program. So you can either live in a bubble and avoid everything, or understand how can I support my body and drain that bucket. So what I did, well, I did inefficiently, but what we do in the program is you need to support your elimination organs. So I was doing all of this isolated. I wasn't doing everything together, which is why it took me like a decade to get to this point. So the idea is that you need to be focusing on all of this at once, and there is a specific order that this needs to happen. So, okay, you have your flare-up bucket that's full, right? I just gave you all of the examples of what filled up mine. And then, so instead of avoiding it, so for a period of time, yeah, you do need to avoid it, and it just gives you some relief. So, yeah, for a short period of time. But then what you want to do is drain that bucket. And so how do you drain the bucket? Okay, you support your elimination organs. So, like with eczema, we know eczema is a hyperimmune response, right? Your immune system is on overdrive. And it can be from allergies, from sensitivities, for toxins, for overgrowth in the gut. So what we need to do is support your organs so you can eliminate those effectively. So that's going to be your gut mainly. And then subsequently after that, we do focus on like your liver, obviously your immune system, but the gut's number one. And then also to be able to get your gut to be working efficiently, we need nutrients. We need to be using food as medicine or sometimes supplementation to help run the engines. I call all of your body systems little conveyor belts. We need to be able to have the engines running on them. And then what helps that? It's your nervous system. So this is where the brain-skin connection comes in. So this is the element that I've only really addressed in the last probably 5 years. And that was a big missing point that I was missing because I had this high level of stress, overwhelm, but that's what gave me the adrenaline and gave me the push to do all of these things, right? So for me, I felt like that was a good thing. Now I realize that that was actually hindering my healing process and also just dealing with like trauma that's happened. Like I would just only forward think and I would never think back. So that's what got me stuck. So let me know if that resonates with anybody because it is common. And so if you zoom out and understand the why, which is one of the things that I try and do in this group so you guys can understand what's happening in your body is, okay, what does your nervous system do? Your nervous system is what gives energy. It's like the electrical volts, and it's what stimulates the muscles, which every single organ is made out of. So every single organ is run by your nervous system. So if you're in a fight and flight, high adrenaline, overwhelm, anxious state, you're not in a state to heal. So that's what keeps everybody stuck. So that also needs to be addressed, which doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, it's been a work in progress for me. But we have, like, that's one of the reasons why we have the psychotherapist Karen in the Brain Skin series in the program, because that has to happen. And that was a big turning point for me. So when we talk about the bucket, we need to drain it. We look at the gut-skin connection. And then depending on what the root cause is, right? What do we need to be supporting to help eliminate it? And then the nervous system, which is going to regulate all of that, needs to happen. We also need to make sure that we have the nutrients to support each of those organs. Let me know in the comments if that made sense. And let me know. And if not, that's totally cool because I can always reach out and give you a little bit like a different analogy or go into it a bit deeper. But that's essentially why you can't just avoid all of your triggers. That's what I did. It's ineffective. It's not a good like quality of life, but draining the bucket is what gives you more resilience. So for me, let's kind of fast forward from my healing journey. Now I haven't had a flare up for years. Like I might get a little scratch or I might get a little dry patch, but it's typically gone in a day, and that really happens for me. It's typically mainly just stress now. So now I'm at a point where food for the most part, like I was away on the weekend, I ate all the cheese, gluten, all like soy, all the things that would usually flare me up, nuts. So I came out of it without a flare up, which is a nice test. So food doesn't really trigger me that much anymore. The change of weather, when it was really humid here before Christmas, I did get a little bit of an itch, and I went for it. I was scratching, but it didn't turn into a flare up. It was like I thought it was gonna go to that dry, flaky phase, but it didn't. So that was cool to see as well. And then like dust, mold, not reactive to that. So when you can support your body so you don't have that high level of inflammation, when you do have a little bit of inflammation from food or from drinking, or from whatever triggers, you don't have as big of a reaction. Does that make sense? So when you can support your body, drain that bucket, reduce the inflammation in your body, then that's what helps you. Does that make sense? So for me, it was gut healing, the gut-skin connection, the brain-skin connection, and really, really honing in on those parts. And adding food was definitely a big one. Also, there's just like some mindset stuff too. So just accepting my skin. This is something that we've been talking about a lot in the program. Because my skin was just like would flare up and down, and especially I had like a high kind of like emotional period of life after a breakup. So I knew my skin was going to be crazy. So I just accepted that I'm going through a lot. I had compassion for myself. I had compassion for my skin, and just accepted that process. Also, reaching out for help. So I am a like hyper independent person. Don't ask for help. Do everything on my own. Like, don't want to be a burden. All those things, and that's also a really hard way to live. Because if you trying to heal yourself and do everything, that's a lot of load on yourself. And starting to ask for help was a big turning point in my life. It was still challenging for me, but I see the difference. And it's one of those things that, especially if you like, I have a degree, right? And I've worked with hundreds of clients. I have a lot of experience, but for people, even in that situation, that's hard, right? But even for people who don't have the education, who haven't spent $90,000, on this journey, it's going to be almost impossible to do it on your own. And also having the community support, that's really helpful as well, because you really want to, be able to talk to people who are going through something similar, and also normalize your experience, because, it's not just you, and you're not diseased, and there's nothing specifically wrong with you. What we need to do is just get your body back to where it was before that hasn't been well set into picture. And that was a big point for me too, because I was like, I know my body can function well, And when I looked at that timeline, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of emotional stuff in my mid-20s. I was drinking a lot, and I was creating a lot of like direct inflammation. It was late nights. I wasn't sleeping, and then I was working. 3 different jobs, like studying and working, starting a business. So like I was not prioritizing myself. So I can see all of those little breadcrumbs. And then also I had it as a kid. So when I was a kid, I probably had gut overgrowth for sure. Like one of my colleagues who specializes with eczema with kids, they do the GI maps and they see the overgrowth with children with eczema. So that was probably the starting point. Emotional stuff compounded with, having a fun lifestyle, so to speak, emotional stuff, and then that was my snowball. So, all right, I think that was, I was hoping to do this under 20 minutes, but let me know if that was helpful. Drop a yes below. I will try and organize to do some more interviews, because that's always really helpful for a lot of people. And I'm going to be doing weekly lives. So if there is anything that you're interested in learning about specifically, drop them in the comments here. I'll do a little post. We have some topics coming up about breaking the itch scratch cycle, food, the good side and bad side of food, how it can create inflammation or reduce inflammation, and there's also one about conventional versus alternative treatment or methods for eczema. So yeah, let me know in the comments if any of those would be helpful. And always love hearing your guys' journey. And if you do ever need to reach out for help, we have Megs and Kessia who help support people in the group. So we have lots of resources. Yeah, I will see you guys later and have a good weekend.